To discuss this further, I'm joined now from Riyadh by Yahya Al-Aridi. He is a spokesman for the opposition Syrian Negotiations Commission. In Washington, we have Lawrence Korb. He is former U.S. Assistant Secretary of Defense and now a senior fellow at the Center for American Progress. And in Stuttgart, we have Kevork Almassian. He is the founder of Syriana Analysis. Thanks all so much for joining us. Let's begin in the United States. Lawrence Korb, immediately following these airstrikes, President Trump said, mission accomplished. From your perspective, what exactly was that mission and was it accomplished?
Well, basically, the mission was to degrade the chemical weapons capability of the Assad regime. And so with the strikes on the research and development facility as well as the two storage sites, they did. The question is, did they get it all? No, they didn't. The military admitted that. And the question becomes then, what will you do the next time if they do it? So if you take the narrow mission that they did degrade the capability, yes, they did. The real question is, what is the mission in Syria? Is it to be part of the negotiations? Is it to maintain the troops in northwestern Syria and provide a safe zone for the fighters who helped us defeat ISIS, as well as people who want to flee the Assad regime? That's the real question. And it seems as a result of what happened in the last week, President Trump has backed off his policy of wanting to leave Syria very, very quickly.
Okay, let's turn to Stuttgart then. And Kevork Almassian, let me ask you, did these three Western powers with these airstrikes do right by the Syrian people?
Actually, if we check the reactions of the Syrian people after the attacks, after the aggression of the Americans, the French, and the British on the Syrian soil, the reactions were enthusiastic and positive because the attack didn't achieve or didn't accomplish the mission, as Donald Trump mentioned, because his advisors and a lot of warmonger hawks in his administration were calling to destroy the air force capabilities of the Syrian government, and also to crush the backbone of the Syrian army in order not to be able to move forward and advance towards Daraa, towards the southern part city of Daraa, and also towards the east, because we know that there is a mobilization of forces going on by the Syrian army in order to fight against the Israeli proxies in Daraa, but also towards the east, where the Americans are illegally occupying a big portion of the Syrian territories under the protection of the so-called Syrian Democratic Forces, where the Americans are depriving Syria from its oil resources. Therefore, the Syrians and their allies are planning and putting strategies in order to kick out the Americans from the Syrian soil. And this is, in my opinion, the main reason behind the attack. It has nothing to do with the alleged chemical attack in Dhouma. The Americans know that there is a consistent strategy by the Syrian and its allies in order to advance forward towards south, towards northern suburbs of Homs, towards Idlib, and most importantly, towards the eastern shores of the Euphrates. And this is a red line for the Americans because they want to deprive Syria from its oil resources in order to foil the reconstruction process. They know that President Assad and the government and the Syrian people will emerge victorious from this war, so let's deprive them from their financial resources in order to foil the reconstruction process and also disconnect Syria from its Iraqi neighbor, and thus disconnecting Syria from Iran and the Central Asia. And this is all about geopolitical conflict and has nothing to do with the internal political process or whether or not the Syrian government used any kind of WMDs, which they don't have, and they have destroyed all the chemical weapons in 2013 under the supervision of the OPCW and with the cooperation of the American warships in the Mediterranean.
Okay, Yahya Al-Aridi, as a member of the opposition, I'd like to get your take on what you heard from Kevork there. I mean, at the very least, you applaud this effort by France, the UK, and the US?
Well, first of all, we applaud any strike on Syria from whoever it comes. In particular, from this brutal regime that faced people's chance for freedom with bullets and bombs and barrel bombs. And at a certain time, with chemical weapons. And I have a real objection to the word, the alleged chemical attack. It is a chemical attack, not for the first time, but for the 400th time. And you know, in 2013, the chemical arsenal was allegedly taken from the regime and destroyed, but it has been proven that the regime continues to use chemical weapons against its own people. And that's why that strike for the killing machine, not for the killer himself or those who are perpetrating crimes against Syrians. And actually, messages were sent to those people who are supporting the regime and who are still till today denying the inspection committee access to Dhouma. They need time to erase any sort of traces for what they did, the crime they perpetrated. And we understand and we saw footage of Russian soldiers in Dhouma getting into the site of the attack, and definitely the purpose is to remove the people and remove any kind of eyewitness or somebody who would attest to the facts. However, the evidence was transferred, transmitted, and documented someplace that the attack took place, and the Assad regime and its supporters were behind that attack.
Okay, yeah, we only have 2 minutes left with Kevork, so I can see he has a response to what you're saying there. Kevork, before we lose you, go ahead.
It's an alleged use of chemical attack because the OPCW inspectors are now in Damascus, but they are refusing to go to Dhouma because they said that they need an approval of the UN Security Council, where the Americans vetoed 2 days ago the Russian proposal for the inspectors to go into Dhouma. In 2013, there was an initial agreement between Damascus government and the OPCW in order to allow the OPCW inspectors to come anytime to Syria. And Damascus government, they invited the OPCW inspectors to come to Syria to investigate the alleged use of chemical weapons in Dhouma. But the inspectors are now in Damascus, but they are refusing to go to Dhouma, claiming that they need an approval of the UN Security Council. And this is against the agreement, the initial agreement between the Damascus government and the OPCW. This is not an alleged destroying, he says that Damascus destroyed allegedly his chemical weapons, but it was approved by the American administration, it was approved by the OPCW, it was approved by the international community. Syria has no chemical weapons anymore since 2013. So any talk about the chemical use in Dhouma at time when the Syrian government was one stone away from reaching victory, and when there was an agreement between Jaish al-Islam with the mediation of the Russian government with the Syrian government to take away these militants into north, this is even a 3-year-old kid cannot believe that the Syrian government might use chemical weapons against 70 civilians, which has no military value, in order to kick out Jaish al-Islam. There was already an agreement with Jaish al-Islam, and they were leaving Dhouma within few hours, and the attack came at a time to foil this process, to foil the leaving of the Jaish al-Islam into north, and they succeeded in this. Now the Americans came and bombed, and it's very shameful for any Syrian to cheer and say, we welcome anyone who bombs Syria. Look, he didn't even mention the Syrian regime, he said Syria. This is our nation. Are we going to clap and applaud the American and the other imperialist powers trying to bomb our countries and bomb our infrastructure that we paid from our tax money? It's unbelievable.